How's everyone this evening? Good. We are on government motions. The Honourable Minister of Finance, Deputy Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move, seconded by the Minister of Health, that the 14th order of the day be now read.
Shall it carry?
Carried. Order number 14, an act to amend the Municipal Government Act, Bill number 66, in committee.
The Honourable Minister of Finance, Deputy Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move, seconded by the Minister of Health, that this, the bill be called for the second reading. No? Oh, committee of the whole. Oh. I move, seconded by the Minister of Health, that this House do now resolve itself into a committee of the whole House to take into consideration the said bill.
Shall it carry? The Honourable Member from Tignish Palmer Road, Deputy Speaker, to chair the Committee of the Whole House, please.
Now in a committee of the whole House to take into consideration the bill to be intituled an act to amend the Municipal Government Act. A request has been made to bring a stranger onto the floor. Shall it be granted?
Oh, jeez, bless you.
I don't know who that is.
You're the man.
You filled right to the brim.
Well, at least I gave you the good cup.
Good evening. Would you please state your name and title for Hansard, please?
Christine McKinnon, Director of Municipal Affairs, Department of Fisheries and Communities.
Thank you very much, Christine. Honourable members, I'm reading the bill section by section. Section 11 has been read and it is still open for questions. Leader of the Opposition.
Thanks, Chair. Welcome back, Christine. Nice to see you. Hi, Minister. We were having a discussion about the amendments that you're bringing forward, Minister, and the effect that that's going to have on smaller municipalities. And I'm wondering what sort of consultation process you did with those smaller municipalities to come to these amendments.
Well, actually, thank you, Chair. During 2020, or this last year, for the last 14 months, I've met with all municipalities across the whole island, individually by CEO or a combination of councillors and the mayor, say, or the CAO. We had several conversations repeat. Prime example would be the community of Montrose, Wellington. Also, I'm trying to think of the one that Mr. Jason Woodbury is the mayor of.
Nicholas.
What's it?
St. Nicholas.
Yeah, St. Nicholas. Many conversations with the capital mayors repeatedly, with councillors in the city of Summerside. Basically, anybody that wanted second consultation or second conversations on the proposals, we met with them. We did receive 15 submissions were received from 11 of the 59 municipalities. Actually gave us written submissions that we consulted with. Specifically, we also have the rural municipality lot number 11, North Shore, Victoria, St. Felix, Union Road. Submissions were also received from local lawyers who works with municipal clients, as well as the Federation of Municipalities. And everyone who submitted proposals, they were all forwarded to the Municipal Affairs to look at and talk about. There was some things that further things that they would like to see changed. We said that we would research them and bring them back for possible other changes in the spring session coming up. So we explained that this is a working document. We want to make sure that I want to make sure that everybody has a chance to, if we're changing something or they think it would be a good change going forward, that we had them conversations with an honourable member.
Leader of the Opposition.
Thanks, that's great. So you met with all 59 municipalities. That's,
Well, actually, at the time, it was 63, and then it was down to when the West River Group
combined.
combined, then it actually dropped down to 59, but, yeah.
Leader of the Opposition.
I'm really happy to hear that. During the process when the MGA was being developed and drafted and also while it was being debated on the floor here a few years ago, and since, I've had ongoing communications with the various municipalities in my district, District 17. As you say, that number is reduced since the West River group amalgamated. And the sort of general feel that I get is people are still confused, and they're still, they don't have a good sense of what the MGA is trying to accomplish. And there are a lot of people, both within municipalities and who live in unincorporated areas, who are unsure. Maybe they'll be even more unsure now, because in a sense we're backtracking on some of the commitments that were made in the original MGA. And I'm just wondering, Minister, what your vision of the future of municipal governance is on Prince Edward Island.
That's a really good question, Honourable Member. From what I've learned, the biggest thing I've learned, I guess, would be talking from municipalities, especially the small little ones, and I've assured them that want to be able to keep their identity and their distinctiveness across the island. That's I've heard that hands down, that they, little community, they have pride in their little area and what they provide, what representation they provide to, the province and the Federation of Municipalities. One thing I've had talks with the Federation is I want them to do more outreach with the small municipalities that might not actually belong to the Federation, and they're doing that. So I think if one thing we've done is I've been striving for is to improve the relationships between neighboring municipalities and the Federation and our department. I know our department, the division, is working very closely with these small little municipalities. I don't want to see anybody lose their identity, because they're all distinct, and I think they all have something to offer. Some municipalities have very limited capability or capacity in what services they actually provide, and some don't provide any whatsoever. But they still, it's based on something that's based on history, and they're very proud of that little area that they represent, and I don't want to lose that. So that's my vision, is to ensure that these small municipalities keep that vision or that history that they've had over the number of years, and we can preserve that. I guess the only thing I'd add to that would be while, providing a uniform sense of governance across the island that protects them also.
Leader of the Opposition.
And therein lies a tricky job. You've got a difficult thing to do here, Minister, and I appreciate that, because we're dealing with municipalities of different scale, different scope, different capacities, different abilities to govern themselves. And we have a number of reports that have been issued over the years. The most recent and perhaps the most cogent one on municipal governance or local governance was the New Foundations report, Thompson report as we know it. And I'm wondering, and there were some very clear recommendations in that Thompson report about what he suggested municipal governments would look like. And one of the, let's see if I can find it, I think I've got it here. His 38th recommendation is this, that the provincial government, through a process of public information and consultation, and you've clearly done a lot of consultation, determine the consensus of islanders in relation to the incorporation, blah, 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 on and on. And I'm wondering, because I haven't found a consensus in my District 17, and I'm wondering, you're far more travelled and you've spoken to more municipalities than I have, but I'm wondering if you have a sense of whether there is a consensus among islanders as to what local governance should look like on PEI.
That's a good point. They all agree that governance across the island needs to be uniform. That some municipalities, they feel like, we're happy the way we are. We don't want to change. We don't want to grow, or change the services they provide to their area, and I respect that. I think one thing I'm very pleased with is I've been saying to them, where do you see yourself in 5 years or 10 years? And I guess if I had an underlying message from the municipalities, it would be how they want to protect their identity. And I really get that. I think each one is very distinct, as I've said. And it is a balancing act, honorable member. It is, because you have, right now we have 59 mayors and we have over 400 and some councilors. And they each got their own little personality and what their vision is. So it is quite a role.
Leader of the Opposition.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I appreciate what you said, and a couple of times, in fact, more than a couple of times now, you've mentioned about the autonomy and the identity of smaller communities, and I agree with you. I live in rural PEI.
Yeah.
I live in a very small community of Hampton, which is currently in an unincorporated area, and I'll get to some questions on that shortly. But I'm wondering whether you feel, and I get a sense from what you've said, you're inferring that a smaller community, such as Bonshaw, for example, which is involved in the West River amalgamation, which just went through, whether you feel in doing that there's a risk that they will lose their, and there is a very distinct community sense about Bonshaw. I'm just using that as an example, Minister, but I reading between the lines of what you said, I get a sense that you fear that they could lose their identity in entering into this amalgamated municipality.
No, I don't think they can. I look at them as suburbs, honorable member.
Pardon me?
I look at them almost as like suburbs. Like you look at Sherwood and Parkdale, they haven't lost their identity. They're still the area of Sherwood within the city, or the area of Parkdale. And, if you go up into Borden Carlton, they're very distinct and still say Carlton when it comes to out in Dickey Road and that area, right? And Carlton Siding, yeah. So I think that I'm not worried about them losing their identity, but I respect and understand that they want to keep their identity. And I think that's very important to preserve history. And that part of it. So I don't want to see them lose their identity as, now that we have West River, for example, but we still have Bonshaw, right?
Okay, I have an intervention from the Minister of Health and Wellness.
Thanks very much, Chair. I find the conversation and the dialogue quite interesting, because the community that I reside in, Stratford, back a number of years, quite a few numbers ago, it was amalgamated into a larger community from various smaller communities, Southport, Bunbury, Crossroads, and the list goes on. But what we've been able to accomplish in our community is celebrate that history, celebrate that past by embracing it and sharing it. So I couldn't think of living in a community better. I still have friends that grew up in Southport, and if you ask them where they're from, even though they live in Stratford, they say, "Oh, I'm from Southport."
Yeah.
Similarly, I grew up in Sherwood, which is now part of Charlottetown, but I would still say Sherwood, just as I would say, "I'll meet you down by the Towers Road." Yeah. So I think we still have that ability as a community to collectively celebrate our history and heritage. Just wanted to throw that in.
Okay, thank you. Leader of the Opposition.
Thanks, I do appreciate that intervention, and a couple of things that you said, the Minister of Health and Wellness, and also the Minister on the promoter of this bill, was that there was somehow a fear that you will lose your identity if you become part of a larger entity, and both of you are saying, actually, I don't think that's the case. So given that was your number one concern about amalgamation, and you're now sort of contradicting yourself by saying, actually, you don't think that's an issue, what other issues do you feel are creating problems for people with the thought of amalgamating into larger municipalities?
Well, first of all, I've never talked about amalgamation or annexation. I don't think that, from what I'm hearing from municipalities that I've had discussions with, is, to be honest, they're not even talking to me about that. They're not even bringing it up. They're talking about wanting to enhance their communities and how to grow them. I'm hearing that hands down across the island. we're making sure that these municipalities know what funding arrangements are available through the Rural Development Agency and also the Economic Development Agency, the Crown Corporation. Some municipalities didn't even know that they could get an EDA worker for the summer and have somebody doing little odd jobs around the community or beautification projects and stuff like that. So I think we've expanded on the capacity by letting them know what is available. You know, I think it's very proud to drive around the island. I find it is to see the signs up that say, welcome to the community of such and such, or you're now entering these little places. And I think the message I've been given is I want to grow their identity and embrace who they are and what they have to offer the island. And every one of them's got a little distinct thing. Like Victoria's very distinct, compared to Crapo. And
You got that right.
and I think that's great. And I think one thing I've been saying to them is how can we show off your small little community where you live and embrace what it was and what it can be in the future and keep on trying to promote that.
Leader of the Opposition?
Why do you think, Minister, it's taken 30 years and several reports to get to the point where we're still unable to move forward with municipal governance at a sort of level where it is large enough to actually provide the services at a local level that all of the reports suggest we need to do?
Fear of change. You know that yourself, the fear of the unknown. I guess I'd have to quote Star Trek, A New Beginning,
Oh, wow.
right? We're there it is.
Spock out. Next.
It's, a thing that I remember back in 1994 when the amalgamation talks between Summerside and Linkletter and St. Eleanor's in that area, right? I remember that, and I remember very distinctly that Borden and Carleton were didn't want to join, and what was there to offer, and they were scared. And I think the two communities, when they came together by themselves and they joined that common boundary, and I think they've done really well. And when I explored the idea of saying, you can share a service with a neighboring community or with another area, they like, what's that? And then you explain it to them, and I can still keep my identity, but I don't have to lose it or join it with somebody else. And to be honest, honorable members, they're excited about it. It's an option so that they can still keep that little sign saying that they are the municipality of St. Felix, or Surrey East would be a prime example. What's that? Pardon me, Christine?
West, Surrey West.
Yeah, Surrey West. Surrey West.
It's a new beginning.
Wrong side of the map there. I was looking the other way when I was looking down. But Surrey West, there's a prime example there. And they were talking about joining Surrey, and they decided, no, we're not going to be swallowed up, and we can still keep our identity.
Leader of the Opposition?
This is an interesting discussion. I realize I'm dominating.
Exactly, but it's such an
here.
interesting conversation, and good questions, good answers, but I'm allowing it to go.
I appreciate that, because these are related to the Municipal Government Act. Some of them, there is no particular section that they refer to because it's regarding unincorporated areas, and the Act is silent on that. But I think it's something that people, islanders, want to hear where the Minister stands on this. So I appreciate you allowing this to go. Thank you.
Absolutely no problem. You have the floor.
As an individual and a member of the Green Party, I'm torn, Minister, when it comes to local governance, because a couple of the founding values and the things that direct how we behave and where we bring our policies from are participatory democracy and self-determination, which is all about allowing people to decide for themselves how they should be governed. And local self-determination would suggest that should be done at the most local level possible. But in order to develop municipalities here that are large enough to actually provide and maintain the services that people want and need in rural areas, there's a certain threshold that needs to be there. And I know Christine has talked about this, that the MGA is not really, it wasn't intended to fit the existing municipalities, rather it was to reform the framework of municipal government so that we would have robust municipalities that would have the capacity and the capability of providing those services. So I'm torn, even though I refer to the values that my party uses when we come to policy positions on anything. And I'm wondering what values and philosophy you come from when you're trying to decide what the municipal governance structure should look like on PEI.
Well, I think that all municipalities, there's basic things that all municipalities must provide, and they all have a basic responsibility, right? All governments have that.
Minister, a little while ago you said that some municipalities, however, provide no services. So how do you square those two statements?
Well, we're actually, that's a good point. We're actually having conversations. Is there another way that we could ensure they be that organization or that group outside of being a municipality? And that's actually conversations that they brought up to me. So, is it some municipalities, the only thing they do is they provide an in and out for fire dues. They have no capacity whatsoever. They don't provide any services whatsoever. I think that we have municipalities, they require that they have to look that, the power and the authority that it goes with that and how that exists for the future municipality, the needs of that municipality, would be one thing. There is municipalities that they have different needs compared to another municipality. So give them the power to identify them different needs that they provide or the different services they want to provide to their residents, I think is a way. They have the power or the authority to provide effective management to the residents. And I think that we must recognize that as a government so that they can make the determination or the decisions that best affect the group of residents that they represent.
Leader of the Opposition.
Thanks. We've talked a little bit about West River in my district and how, relatively smooth that transition was from 5 independent municipalities to 1 combined municipality. Not without its turbulent moments, I should say, but made easier by the fact that they were already all existing municipalities and they were contiguous. They were all joined together. That wasn't the case in Three Rivers at all. There was a lot of concern out there, particularly from the areas that were unincorporated and found themselves literally in the middle of this new municipality made up largely of incorporated municipalities. And there was a lot of concern amongst the citizens of that area as to whether their voices were being heard adequately at the table. And the Minister of Transportation, Infrastructure and Infrastructure and Energy was very active in bringing those concerns to the fore. Looking ahead, well, first question is, are there any other active talks at the moment across the province that you're aware of further amalgamation? There
is an application that was submitted by the town of Kensington. That is before IRAC right now. That's the only one that I've been made aware of. That's the only application that I've received forward to IRAC. There's no other talks across the island. The only talks that I know of that are ongoing is the talking of shared services or how municipalities can share with another area. Now, actually, I'll let you know that last night I had a meeting with the Central Development Corporation, and it was on a complete different topic. And at the end of the night, the CAO informed me that, or one of the board members, I should say, informed me that they see an opportunity for them to be some kind of broker or an organization that could provide some services to municipalities. So that's, and they've, you know, they've been reached out. Municipalities have actually reached out to them and talked to them about that.
Leader of the Opposition.
Thanks, Chair. Interesting you bring up CDC and Badek, of course, which is one of the areas where there was a real hot spot of concern, O'Leary and Three Rivers being the other two, in my mind, that have expressed the most vociferous concern about what may happen if amalgamation happens, and they live in an unincorporated area that is going to be included in that. There's nothing in the MGA, there are no provisions whatsoever in there for areas that are unincorporated that could be either annexed or included in a new amalgamated community. What, as minister, would you do if a future amalgamation came forward that did include unincorporated areas, as happened in Three Rivers?
Well, prime example would be the town of Kensington. When they came and met with me over that, I informed them right point blank that if you're having any thoughts of annexing in any area of an unincorporated area, you will have conversations and consultation with the people being affected. And that was that on the Kensington submission. They did go to the community and the amalgamated area and directly asked for submissions, either for or against, or any comments thereabout.
Leader of the Opposition.
I'm pleased that happened. I realize this is still underway, as you said. So consultations happened, an opportunity for people who live in unincorporated areas was provided for feedback. How are you going to determine whether the feedback you receive from those unincorporated areas is representative of all of the people who live in that area?
I think one thing we've been very successful doing, Honourable Member, is I remember when the original MGA was brought on the floor of the House. I remember the votes. I remember who voted for what in the MGA. I think the position this administration has taken and my department is taking is that I want to see consultation with any part of the MGA and how that affects anybody. And I think that's very important. I stand by that. I think that if any municipality or any resident in PEI if there's any type of conversation going on, then it's my responsibility to ensure that all people that are affected or could be affected are consulted with. And I will do that.
Leader of the Opposition.
Thanks, Chair. I think the previous administration would say quite clearly that there was consultation involved in the Three Rivers process, and yet a lot of people were distinctly and deeply unhappy at the end of that. So consultation in itself is not enough. You have to have some sort of process to make sure that the voices of those people who are involved in an amalgamation process and yet are not part of a municipality are heard in a truly representative way. How are you going to do that?
Change the tone for you.
Not at all. This is being completely
Video
consistent.
saying we should have these communities.
Honourable members.
You were all
Leader of the
on
Opposition has the floor.
Chair,
Okay, do you want a response?
is that an intervention or
Pardon me?
is that an intervention?
Okay.
Never hot
Mr.
when we need it yet.
You want to respond?
Thank you, Chair. All I can tell you is I'm not going to speculate on any area or the outcome of any area that wants to put an application before my desk. My direction and my, I guess, promise is that I will ensure that there's consultation will take place between any area or any resident that an application is received that affects.
Leader of the Opposition.
Thanks, Chair. Is there any minimum, because the MGA requires a minimum population size and tax base, or suggests, I should say. Do you have any minimum in mind for the ongoing, perpetual, I should say, existence of municipalities that are in place right now?
No, I don't. No. I think it's up to municipalities, Honourable Member. let's let the municipalities make, have the vision of what they want to see going forward, and let them work together collaboratively like it was done in the West River, and allow them to put a submission forward that government can review and look at and consider.
Leader of the Opposition,
I'm good, thanks, Chair.
Charlottetown Brighton.
Thank you, Chair. I had a more general question relating to the land use, land planning. How is that dealt with in the Municipality Act?
Thank you, Honourable Member. I think good land use and good land planning across the whole island is needed. I'll be very pleased to see what comes out of Land Matters 2020, that the Minister of Agriculture and Lands is engaged in that consultation right now. But I think that one thing I am hearing from municipalities is they want to have good land use planning in effect, or the ability to consider that with what happens in a municipality. I think that we're long overdue with a plan that has a good land-based eye looking at it.
Charlottetown Brighton.
Yes, I completely agree. There's a great need. As far back as I can remember, all governments has pushed land use and land planning matters down the road. I'm just wondering how you expect something that's quite complex and require professional as well as community input, how you see that happening. Do you see it divided up in between all kinds of small municipalities with the leftover unincorporated areas just?
Well, I think that it follows within, I think we need to look to see what's going to come out of Land Matters 2020, in that consultation, and what they hear from the residents and the people of PEI.
Charlottetown Brighton.
Okay. I thought that was more about land ownership and, but maybe I'm wrong. If there's
Do you want to
something.
add to that, Christine? No. Minister of Agriculture might have an intervention.
Planning Act.
Do you want an intervention? Do you want an intervention?
Sure.
Okay, no, I'm just asking because, okay, so an intervention by the Minister of Agriculture, Land, Justice, Public Safety, and the Attorney General.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Land Matters is the Land Protection Act as well as the Planning Act. So land use.
Charlottetown Brighton.
Okay, thank you. I'm happy to hear that land planning might be coming in the future. Thank you.
Leader of the Third Party.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Minister. The Federation of Municipalities, how many municipalities are a member of the Federation of Municipalities?
Thanks, Chair. That's a good question. Something tells me right now they're somewhere in the 50% or a little bit higher. Pardon me?
There are 40.
Yeah, 40 municipalities of the 59 that belong to it. One thing as I said to the honourable member, the Leader of the Opposition, is I've had many conversations with the Federation. I actually had a conversation with their executive director today on another matter, and I'm very encouraged by. I've told them I think that all municipalities need to be engaged within that federation, and they've assured me that they're working on that, and that they will make sure that even though a municipality is not a member, that they will provide them information or support if they're asked.
Leader of the Third Party.
So am I correct or incorrect by assuming that the Federation of Municipalities is the spokesperson for all municipalities? So if you're not a member of it, how can they speak on your behalf? Is that correct?
I understand. Are they a federation? They're not I can't say what their actual mandate is or comment on actually how they do business, but they see themselves as a voice for municipalities. One conversation I've had with them in the past is that they realize there's municipalities that do not belong, but that they, you know, they should consider any views that they might have also.
Leader of the third party.
So, to go back in history a little bit, the Federation of Municipalities was quite involved with the new MGA Act. They had a lot of input into it. And how's your communication going with them now that you're picking and changing things? Like, when you were over here,
Yep.
18 months ago, your biggest concerns were the 20 hours,
Yep.
was the cost to do an audit for small municipalities, and population size. Well, there's municipalities that were just barely scrimping by 2 years ago.
Yep.
And are you helping them through your department, or have they increased their taxes because their land base hasn't gotten bigger? Some of them are surrounded by farmland, which is not gonna be part of it, like it's in their municipal
Yeah,
boundaries, but it's not their land to do anything with. They have no development, so, like, I guess what I'm trying to say is, are you setting some of these municipalities up
No.
to fail?
No.
Because have they increased their taxes, or by you doing some of these things which I commend you for, because some of them couldn't afford the 20 hours, and we were in those discussions, and some of them couldn't afford the audit. But what makes things better for them now, when their population hasn't increased, their taxes haven't gone up?
It's a good question. Finances are a concern of some municipalities, and the ability to pay for a financial audit or review engagement. However, any conversation I've had with municipalities is, yeah, it's a concern to them, but they agree that good financial accounting, as the honorable member from Mermaid Stratford, talks about, that good fiscal management and the reporting of that is needed. Now, some municipalities have been able to, they're working with our department themselves to make sure that their financial reporting is up to date. And I believe right now, everybody is up to date as of right now. And that's the first year, when some of these municipalities had to get an audit done, they were actually doing an audit for 18 months, not just 1 year. So they were doing 2 year ends basically at the same time to try to close things off, which of course is more expensive than compared to others. But one municipality, particular smaller municipality, they've been able to secure their audit at a very low cost, of less than $1,000. Some councillors that I've talked to have stated that they want to see good governance. They want to, before they become a mayor or a councillor, that they want to make sure the books are accounted properly, the same as we do in this house. Some municipalities, they recognize that they provide a different service in utilities, which requires a separate audit. Some municipalities, of course, if they receive gas tax money, that requires a separate audit according, as per the federal requirements. But we're offering assistance to these municipalities to help them with their financial reporting, to ensure that they can do it in a good economical way. I can tell you that one conversation I've had was with an organization, Central Development Corporation, on would they be willing to provide third-party level type of accounting services to small municipalities. And they're interested in that, which would be a shared service model. And when them conversations, we talked about them actually taking on a staff member. The conversations I've had with the Central Development Corporation is where they could actually take on a chartered accountant that might be a retired individual or something on a part-time basis, and they could provide that service to municipalities. So these talks are going on, and I'm very aware that the finances of municipality and their ability to pay, if they've only got maybe 50 transactions or 75 transactions in a complete year, is limited. But everybody agrees that they are receiving government money by some amount, and that there needs to be financial accountability for that money.
Leader of the opposition, Leader of the third party.
Thanks. I've been called that a few times. Thanks.
Promotion. No offense, sir.
Mr. So the MGA is starting to be, I'll use the word dismantled for lack of a better word, to accommodate smaller municipalities. So should there not be two tiers of this? Like, from my understanding, this MGA started with previous minister and with the Federation of Municipalities because the act was pretty old.
Yeah.
And things were not up to date in a lot of areas. And now, some of the things that were recommended, that were voted on, are being changed to accommodate, which I think is great what you're trying to do here for the smaller municipalities so they keep their identity. But how do they fall under the MGA if they're not following the rules of the MGA? Like, you know, a bigger municipality's got more stringent rules and a smaller one doesn't. Like, should there not be two templates here?
I don't see where there is two different set of rules, to be honest. I don't see us dismantling it. I see us making changes or options available to ensure identities are kept, but there is still a level of governance on an equal footing. You know, whether you're a mayor of Charlottetown or a mayor of St. Felix, you still have the same responsibility. At the end of the day, you're a mayor, right? As a councillor, you still have the same responsibility as a councillor, whether you're in Summerside or you're in Charlottetown. So I don't see it as dismantling. I don't see it as weakening it. I see it as, you know, listening to the municipalities of small little, we'll say, tweaks to ensure that, you know, they're working with the MGA, you know, to the fullest. Some municipalities are going to have to account to a higher standard than others, yes, because they provide more services, right? You know, the city of Charlottetown would have a greater responsibility to account for the money they deal with because they have a larger population than a place like Borden or King Court or St. Felix or Misquosh. So of course there would be a higher level of expectation, we'll say, on them because of the services they provide. But at the end of the day, the responsibility as that municipality is the same.
Leader of the third party.
And one final question, Minister, and I appreciate everything you're doing in your department and your dealings with municipalities. Are you committed to, if municipalities want to get together and talk about amalgamation, you're okay, but you're not going to force any amalgamations, are you?
You have my word on that, Honourable Member.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Honourable members, it was the wishes of the committee that the bill be read section by section, and I did allow some of the I guess the perimeters to be stretched a little bit, and then they're blown wide open now. So I have quite a list compiled. I'm going to ask members if we can get back to your questions pertaining to the section that we're on presently. So this is section 11. And I'm moving to Mermaid Stratford.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if mine is pertaining to section 11. It just came as a follow-up to kind of a statement that the minister had said. So could I ask for your indulgence to ask the question?
Sure, and there's been a willingness and an engagement to the other one, so we'll see how that goes.
Okay, thank you. So first question would be, how many certified professional planners does the department have on staff?
Christine?
Currently, we have one person.
Okay.
Mermaid Stratford?
So thank you for that. Thank you, Chair. So the question I had, you kind of pointed out that I speak often about the role of the Auditor General and the fiscal accountability.
I think that's a good thing.
That is. I know, I do. But what that triggered for me was I've had several people reference municipal value for money audits. And in other jurisdictions, they have an office of the auditor in municipalities. And I'm wondering if there's ever been any discussion within the department of the larger, like I'm certainly not talking about somebody like Alexander or anything like that, but we have a few major municipalities here in PEI. But has there ever been any discussions around having an auditor general function to do performance audits within major municipalities?
Thanks, Chair. No, there hasn't. Honourable Member, no.
Okay.
Mermaid Stratford?
So I think the role of the Auditor General is to ensure that taxpayers' money is being used in in the way that it is said that it's going to be used. And so not any further questions, maybe we could have a conversation about what that might look like.
Sure.
And if it makes sense to, refer that to a standing committee to have a look at, or something along that.
Good point.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Time Valley Sherbrooke.
Thank you, Chair. So I know Section 11 is about the ability of municipalities to share office resources. So my question is not, it's not specifically about that, but it is about the allocation of resources and the cost and time that a municipality spends or is required to spend on certain aspects. So the official planning process that municipalities go through, it's my understanding they're able to access some funding for a consultant to help with this, but they apply for that. Is that correct? Just so I understand.
Christine?
Chair, the official planning process is guided by the Planning Act, and land use planning is at this point an optional service for municipalities. And yes, at this point, the federal gas tax capacity building program allows a municipality to make an application to pay for a consultant.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
Oh, okay, so I might have, I might have misunderstood where that support comes from then. So that's a federal program that they apply to get that additional support for the planning, not provincial?
That's correct.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
Okay, well, that's good to know. One of the concerns I've heard from smaller municipalities is, that it's good to have that support, but that the process itself is onerous in terms of having to go through the application when they're going to get approved anyway. So it is, I guess it is a federal program, so it's outside of provincial jurisdiction, but I don't know if the ministers in his department have ever considered perhaps providing some supports or suggesting to the federal government that there might be a more streamlined way to manage this process so that, since every municipality is going to have access to this anyway, so that they don't have to just keep applying and applying every time they need it. I don't know if that's something you've ever considered, but it's a complaint I've heard from municipalities.
We'll take that under advisement, and we can have the conversation about that.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
That's all, Chair. Thank you.
You're welcome. Charlottetown Brighton.
Thank you, Chair. We have heard recently that the building code now will be applicable, I think, early next year. How is that going to be enforced in terms of municipality or lack of same? It obviously, the big cities that already follow it, they have their own system set up. How would it apply to smaller municipalities, or for that matter, if there's none?
Thank you, Honourable Member, for the chair for the question, but that would not fall under our department or under the MGA. That would fall under the Department of Lands and Agriculture and Lands.
Charlottetown Brighton.
Okay, thank you.
Shall the section carry?
Carry.
Section 12. Shall section 12 carry?
Carried.
Section 13.
Carried.
Section 14. Section 15. Section 16. Shall section 16 carry? 17. Section 18. Section 19. Section 20. Question from, I'm sorry, Leader of the Opposition.
Thanks, Chair. So this section, Section 20 and Section 119 allows councils to go into a closed session. So I'm wondering how the amendments in this section affect that power.
Christine?
Mr. Chair, there are a list of reasons why a council can meet in private in a closed meeting behind closed doors. These amendments are providing additional clarity to confirm that If the matter is confidential and might identify an individual, that is a good reason for them to go behind closed doors. We've also clarified that human resource matters, including labor relations or employee negotiations, can take place behind closed doors. And the other reference there is about conducting existing or anticipated legal proceedings or the review of legal advice could happen behind closed doors. So it hasn't removed anything, it's simply added clarity about the reasons.
Leader of the Opposition.
Thanks, I appreciate that, Christine. So in order to go into camera, one or more of those situations has to be present. They can't just pass a motion to go into camera and simply do that.
That's correct. A reason must be provided under the appropriate section of the Act.
Leader of the Opposition.
So if a member of the public felt that a municipality had abused that opportunity to go into camera, is there any way that is there any complaint mechanism, or is there any recourse for a member of the public to come forward?
They could file a complaint.
Frequently, they'll ask for interpretation. They may appeal to the council for additional information. So the first point of request is typically to the council or to the CAO to provide information. So just to clarify that, although a council can close their meeting for a discussion, they are not allowed to make a decision behind closed doors. So at some point, whatever issue was being discussed must be presented to a public meeting for a resolution, so that the ultimate decision is made in public.
That's right.
Leader of the Opposition.
Again, I appreciate that clarity. That's really important. So discussions of a sensitive nature happen in camera and presumably are never made public, Christine?
Depending on the circumstance, within very tight parameters, it may be that it's a private conversation, but if there is a decision to be made, it must be in public.
That's right.
Leader of the Opposition.
So no decisions are made in camera then? I'm sorry, was there a reply to that?
No.
That the intent is that there are no decisions. That's the legislation is very clear that there are no decisions made behind closed doors.
That's right.
Leader of the Opposition.
I want to go back to an answer you gave, Christine, to the member from Stratford Mermaid on the number of certified planners that we have. Am I right, you said we have one currently?
Within the Municipal Affairs Division, there is one registered planner, yes.
Leader of the Opposition.
Is that a typical number for the department to have?
Within the Municipal Government Act, land use planning is simply one more of the services provided by a municipality, and so the responsibility is delegated to the municipalities. The role that we have is in reviewing amendments to official plan documents, but it's authority under the Planning Act.
Leader of the Opposition.
I may not get these statistics exactly right, but it's my understanding that 70% of the province in terms of land base is unincorporated, and 90% of the province in terms of land base has no official land plan. So, land use plan, excuse me. So presumably in areas where there is no municipal capacity to do that, that falls to the province, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So in 90% of the land of this province, we have one certified planner to oversee that? Is that correct?
No.
The land use planning happens in the 29 of the 59 municipalities that have chosen to offer land use planning.
Leader of the
And
Opposition.
There's two departments, right? So the minister takes care of the unincorporated areas. 29 municipalities have land use planning in effect, and then that one planner would take care of the rest.
But it's not a supervisory
That's right.
role. We simply administer amendments to the official plans and bylaws, the zoning bylaws by municipalities. Although we're giving advice to the municipalities, we don't supervise the way they do land use planning. That's under the Planning Act.
Leader of the Opposition.
Just, and this is my inability to grasp this, but that 90% of the land base which is unincorporated, the land use planning for that does not sit within your department?
Leader of the Opposition.
That sits in the Minister of Justice and Public Safety and Agriculture and Land. I'm wondering whether I may ask a question about the number of certified planners that we have in that department looking after that land base.
You can ask the question, but I need to, if he wants to take. Intervention requested by the Minister of Agriculture and Land.
I believe we have 3, maybe 2 for sure, I think it's the third.
Leader of the Opposition.
I ask this because there are a number of delays that I've experienced, not personally, but constituents have come to me and other members of my caucus regarding things that have to go through certified land planners. Is 3 a typical number that we would have to look after that amount of land?
An intervention from the Minister of Agriculture and Land.
3 is probably could look at adding more. It's a very, to do the proper consultation and the work, it takes quite a bit of time. So I haven't heard that we need more, but it's something I will look at.
Leader of the Opposition.
Of those 3 planners, have they been present as employees in this role for quite some time?
An intervention from the Minister of Agriculture and Land. Leader of the
Lost
Opposition.
any land use planners, certified planners in the recent past? Thanks.
Sorry.
Could you repeat the question, please? Leader of the
Sorry.
Opposition.
Have we lost any certified planners from your department recently?
An intervention from the Minister of Agriculture and Land.
We just recently hired a new planner, and actually a planner left our department to go to Minister of Community and Municipal Affairs Department, so we just hired a new person in Somerset.
Leader of the Opposition.
I'm good, thanks, Chair.
You're welcome. Leader of the Third Party.
Thanks, Chair. I'd just like to go back to the in-camera meeting. So municipalities having a meeting tonight. It starts at 7. And general public's allowed to come, right? You can sit there, and if they go into the committee of the whole or in camera, general public has to leave. So they discuss whatever they have to discuss. Could you give me an example of things that they would discuss? Do they come back to a regular meeting, or does that come at the next monthly meeting and they vote on it? They cannot vote in camera, did you say earlier?
That's
Bring
correct.
Right, they
things
can't
back. So
make
Give me
it-
an example, or is that just everything like that goes in
Everything, they
camera?
can't make a decision in camera behind a closed door. If they want to make a decision based on a discussion they had behind a closed door, then they would have to bring forward a resolution or a motion back in the open. A prime example could be a human resources matter where they're discussing a human resources matter in regards to an individual or a person, a staff member.
Leader of the Leader of the Third Party.
So they would go into camera, have their discussions, then at a public meeting, either later that evening or the next meeting, they would vote on that.
That's right.
So
Leader of the Third
that's
Party?
a HR issue. So let's say they were providing services, like water service or sewage service. If they went in camera that they were going to cut 6 residents off, they can't make that decision till they go back to public?
That's right.
Is this something that was
Leader
always
of
there?
the
Is this
Third Party?
something new in the MGA?
No, something was always there.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Leader of the
Thank you.
Third Party.
I'm good for now, thanks, Chair.
Mermaid Stratford.
Carry the bill.
Thank you, Chair. And I'd just like to jump off what the Leader of the Official Opposition was asking about when it comes to certified planning, because I do think that this is a very important aspect of what's going to happen, be discussed in Land Matters PEI. It was a big discussion topic from the 2014 Task Force on Land Use Planning. And so my understanding is there's one certified professional planner within your department. Are they certified with the with the PEI Provincial Institute Professional Planners?
Christine?
I need to explain that there currently is no provincial framework for the self-regulated profession, although The act has been debated. It has not been proclaimed because the regulations needed to be developed. And so planners that are certified in other jurisdictions come here to work, but it's not a Prince Edward Island certification.
Mermaid Stratford?
Okay, and are you involved in those, writing those regulations? My understanding is that received royal assent, I believe, in 2016. Do you have any idea why PEI doesn't have its own act proclaimed at this point in time?
In the transition of departments last year, that responsibility was moved to Department of Agriculture and Land, so it's not part of Fisheries and Communities mandate.
Mermaid Stratford?
Okay.
Okay, Mermaid Stratford, do you have a question, another question?
No, I don't. Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome. Shall the section carry?
Carry.
Section 21. Minister of Education, Lifelong Learning.
Thank you, Chair. And really, I just wanted to say thank you for your great work on this bill, and especially thank you for moving forward with a lot of discussions that, you know, I had with the minister when I was the opposition critic, and you're making some really good progress here. I wanted to recognize Dave Pizio from Greenmount to Montrose for the work he's done. I see a lot of his concerns are addressed in here, and I know it's not all addressed yet, but these are some great steps forward, so I wanted to thank you very much. And also, I was looking at the leader of the third party, and I wanted to say that those folks in St. Nicholas as well, I think we'll be very, very happy with some of the changes in here. I know there was a meeting there where they were electing new council and they didn't have enough people, and it was touch and go, and it was a heartfelt moment where members of the community came forward, but amendments like in section 8 where you're allowing 7 days to fill those additional vacancies are so important, and I just wanted to say thank you.
Shall section 21 carry? Carry. Section 22.
Carried.
Section 23.
Carried.
Section 24.
Carried.
Section 25.
Carried.
Section 26.
Carried.
Section 27.
Carried.
Section 28.
Carried.
And section 29. Shall the bill carry?
Carried.
Chair,
No, you just have to say it. You don't have to say it.
an act,
No.
this one here? I move the title.
An act to amend the Municipal Government Act. Shall it carry?
Carried. I move the enacting clause.
See it enacted by the Lieutenant Governor and the Legislative Assembly of the Province of Prince Edward Island as follows. Shall it carry?
Carried.
Mr. Chair, I move the Speaker take the chair and the chair reports the bill agreed to without amendment.
Shall it carry?
Carried.
It doesn't work when you panic. Mr. Speaker, as Chair of the Committee of the Whole House, having under consideration a bill to be intituled an Act to amend the Municipal Government Act, I beg leave to report that the committee has gone through the said bill and has agreed to same without amendment. I move the report of the committee be adopted.
Shall it carry?
Carried.
The Honourable Minister of Economic Growth, Tourism and Culture.
Mr. Speaker, I move, seconded by the Minister of Education, Lifelong Learning, that the 27th order of the day now be read.
Shall it carry?
Carried.
Order number 27, Health and Dental Services Cost Assistance Act, Bill number 73, ordered for second reading.
The Honorable Minister of Economic Growth, Tourism and Culture.
Mr. Speaker, I move, seconded by the Minister of Education and Lifelong Learning, that the said bill now be read a second time.
Shall I carry?
Bill number 73, Health and Dental Services Cost Assistance Act, read a second time.
The Honorable Minister of Economic Growth, Tourism and Culture.
Mr. Speaker, I move, seconded by the Minister of Education and Lifelong Learning, that this House do now resolve itself in the Committee of the Whole House to take into consideration the said bill.
Shall carry. The Honorable Member from Tignish Palmer Road, Deputy Speaker, to chair the Committee of the Whole House, please.
The Committee of the Whole House to take into consideration a bill to be entitled Health and Dental Services Cost Assistance Act. A request has been made to bring a stranger onto the floor. Shall it be granted?
Granted.
Yeah. How did you know?
He used to be Finance Minister.
Wow.
Good evening. Would you please state your name and title for Hansard, please?
Nicola Hewitt, Solicitor and Legislative Specialist with the Department of Health and Wellness.
Thank you very much. And Minister, would you like to commence with a brief statement on the bill's intent?
Sure, Mr. Chair, it's fairly straightforward. The Health and Dental Services Cost Assistance Act established the legislative framework to facilitate implementation of a new health and dental services programs under which government will be the payer of last resort.
Thank you. Honourable members, it's the pleasure of the committee that the bill be now read clause by clause, section by section, or open the bill up as a whole for general questions. As a whole, Chair. Thank you very much. I am now taking names. Any questions? Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
Thank you, Chair. Section 21, the changes to the Social Assistance Act here, can you just tell me a little bit about that, what those changes are, what that means?
Yep, go ahead,
Yeah.
Nicola.
So the Social Assistance Act has a provision that includes the provision of health care and dental services that are prescribed by regulations that would be eligible, persons who are eligible for assistance under the under the Social Assistance Act would be eligible for those types of benefits.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So what impact, just can you elaborate a bit exactly what impact this Section 21 will have on those programs for social assistance clients?
Well, I guess it will all depend on what program you're looking at. As discussed during our prior consultations, some of the benefits are being transitioned from social development housing and coming over to health and wellness, one of them being the dental programs. And so we're actually offering, there's more people that are low-income people that are going to be entitled to benefits under the new program that will be set up in these regulations. And indeed, many of the benefits will be enhanced for some of the recipients in those programs. That's the net result.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, and no, that is fantastic to hear. And of course, we did talk about that when We did a consultation. Of course, I did have a question that I was expecting a response back on, but here we are. What I want to guarantee on, or what I would like to have some clarification on, is when this act is proclaimed, it's my understanding that the current dental supports that are available to social assistance clients will no longer be able to be available in the way they are currently, so we would have to have the regulations in place for the new dental assistance program. Of course, I would expect that would happen, but should there be any delays on those regulations, I would want to make sure that this particular section of the act is not proclaimed until those regulations are definitely in place, so there's no gap in service.
Chair? Yeah, certainly, you have our guarantee that that would not happen.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
Just wanted to get that on the record. Thank you, Chair. That's all.
You're welcome. Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you. Tyne Valley Sherbrooke covered much of what I was going to have, the only sort of solid question, but a comment. I want to thank the Minister. I want to thank Nicola for bringing this bill forward. The expansion of dental services beyond those who are solely receiving social assistance is a profoundly big step forward for a large number of low-income islanders who may not have dental coverage, but, you know, like all of us, suffer from dental problems from time to time. And they can be debilitating, not just from a physical point of view, but financially as well, in order to restore that. So I don't think we can underestimate what an impact this is going to have on the lives of literally thousands of islanders. And I want to thank the Minister for coming forward with this bill and with the budgetary promise to fund dental programs for a much larger number of islanders than currently are covered. And furthermore, that those who are receiving social assistance, and Nicola, you just said this, as a dentist previously, it was heartbreaking not to be able to do what you know is best for the patient because of the restrictions of the program. And I know that many dentists, regardless of that, would do what was necessary and just not claim the bill for it. But to be able to provide those people with the same level of dental services and the dignity that comes with that, not having to take teeth out that you knew did not have to come out, is again a huge step forward. So thank you, Minister, for the provision of this bill and for your commitment to financial support for these dental services.
Thank you, Leader of the Official Opposition. I want to add, too, that although I believe in this, and this has been a long time coming, I want to give credit to Dr. Joanne Stewart. She's a practicing dentist in Stratford, and I vividly recall having a conversation with her one day at her office where we started talking about seniors in long-term care and community care and how their oral hygiene suffers from the day they go in, whether it be dentures, plates, et cetera, So we had a really good conversation. We had a follow-up conversation with some of her colleagues as well around that. So that sort of is where the seed was planted, and it just grew from there. So credit to Dr. Joanne Stewart.
Leader of the Opposition.
I would echo that, and indeed all the dental community, including those involved in public dental services. Dr. Albert, who presumably will be one of the people who will be thrilled when this bill passes. And on that note, can I ask a question regarding the division of provision of services? I know that the private dental offices, as they have done for many, many years, providing the children's dental program here, will presumably be involved in the provision of this program. But will there be also an expansion of the public dental services? I know when I came forward with our budget ask in the last operational budget, the 1.2 million to expand services, I consulted with Dr. Albert, and he was thrilled at the prospect of the public service being expanded. Is that going to be part of the plan?
I don't honestly know the answer to that. I mean, it was tonight at about 6:30 I was provided with a manual. So I just simply haven't had time to go through it and see exactly what's involved. Because we're very much still involved in regulation drafting and everything else. And I'm working with, as you know, Dr. Albert, can't pronounce the rest of the name, and the folks out at Primary Care on developing this. So.
Okay.
Leader of the Opposition.
I'm good, thank you, Chair.
You're welcome. Minister of Transportation, Infrastructure and Energy.
Thank you, Chair. Just wondering about Section 17, if you could explain that.
This is a clause that holds officers and directors of a corporation personally liable for decisions that are made by the corporation. It prevents them from hiding behind what we call in the legal world the corporate veil for actions they take or fail to take.
Minister of Transportation, Infrastructure and Energy.
Okay. So where would this come? What's the background that this would be necessary?
Well, it's commonly used in many pieces of legislation. We had a great debate on this past summer. We now refer to this in the office as the O'Leary Clause, because it's, like I say, it was well debated, and it's I don't know what else to say. Sorry? So it's a legal concept that's important to hold people accountable for their actions or, like I say, failure to act.
Okay, thank you.
Tyne Valley, Sherbrooke.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to just echo the Leader of the Opposition's comments on the appreciation for the supports being put forward for low-income islanders for dental care. I'm sure many of us have heard, from constituents about what it's like to not be able to get the essential dental care you need when you need it, and how that impacts your day-to-day life and snowballs, right? If you have a dental issue that becomes infected because you can't get the proper treatment, it really is devastating for individuals and also a drain on our healthcare system. So this is a very effective investment, and I want to thank the Leader of the Official Opposition for his leadership on advocating for this, the 1.2 million. As the health critic, it's been a steep learning curve, and for me, it's been a great opportunity to learn from his expertise in this area as his previous role as a dentist, and I think this will make such a big difference for so many islanders. So I wanted to just say that. Thank you.
Minister of Social Development and Housing.
Thank you, Chair, and I do not have any questions on this bill, just 2 or 3 comments. Certainly, I do appreciate the suggestions, the concerns that the official opposition have brought forward with regard to the continuity of benefits for those who would presently be covered under social assistance benefits, whether it's under any of the programs under my department presently. Do want to give credit certainly to the Minister of Health and Wellness for his initiative on this. And just going back to the comments, the concerns that were brought forward by different members of the official opposition, and I will echo the Minister of Health and Wellness's comments with regard to when the regs are put in place to ensure that there is continuity of coverage there as well. It was mentioned with regard to Dr. Stewart. I've had the opportunity to meet with Dr. Stewart several times over the last year and a half, as well as Paul H. Skierman, who was a tremendous advocate for the enhancements that we are seeing here today. So personally, I want to recognize both Dr. Stewart and Mr. Paul H. Skierman as well. Thank you.
You're welcome. Shall Bill Carey?
Carey.
Did they say
They
anything?
did not agree.
They won't? No? Okay.
Tomorrow, I hope.
Okay. Yep. I move the title.
Health and Dental Services Cost Assistance Act shall carry.
Carried. I move the enacting clause.
Be it enacted by the Lieutenant Governor in the Legislative Assembly of the Province of Prince Edward Island as follows. Shall it carry?
Carried. Mr. Chair, I move the Speaker take the chair and that the chair report the bill agreed to without amendment.
Shall carry?
Carried.
Mr. Speaker, as Chair of the Committee of the Whole House, having under consideration a bill to be entitled Health and Dental Services Cost Assistance Act, I beg leave to report that the committee has gone through the said bill and has agreed to same without amendment. I move the report of the committee be adopted.
Shall it carry? The Honourable Minister of Economic Growth, Tourism and Culture.
Mr. Speaker, I move, seconded by the Minister of Education and Lifelong Learning, that the 28th order of the day now be read.
Shall it carry?
Order number 28, an act to amend the Internet Images Protection Act, Bill number 74, ordered for second reading.
The Honourable Minister of Economic Growth, Tourism and Culture.
Mr. Speaker, I move, seconded by the Minister of Education and Lifelong Learning, that the said bill now be read a second time.
Shall it carry?
Bill number 74, an act to amend the Intimate Images Protection Act, read a second time.
The Honourable Minister of Economic Growth, Tourism and Culture.
Mr. Speaker, I move, seconded by the Minister of Education and Lifelong Learning, that this House do now resolve itself into a committee of the whole House to take into consideration the said bill.
Shall it carry? The Honourable Member from Tignish, Palmer Road, Deputy Speaker, to chair the Committee of the Whole, please.
The House is now in a committee of the whole House to take into consideration a bill to be entitled an act to amend the Intimate Images Protection Act. The request has been made to bring a stranger onto the floor. Shall it be granted? Please state your name and title for Hansard.
Blair Barber, Legislative Specialist for Justice and Public Safety.
Thank you very much, Blair. Promoter, would you like to start with a general statement on the bill's intent?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a very important private member's bill that was brought to the legislature by the member from Charlottetown Victoria Park in the spring, and I want to thank her for that. This bill will update the Intimate Images Protection Act to make it more effective by adding a fast-track court process and by clarifying the act applies to altered images as well.
Thank you very much, Minister. Honourable members, is it the pleasure of the committee that the bill be now read clause by clause, section by section, or open it up as a whole to general questions?
Section by section.
Okay. Do we want section by section? Okay. Okay, section 1. Shall section 1 carry? Question from Charlottetown Victoria Park.
How does this, what's changed in this section?
Section 1, of course, deals with the definitions that are applicable to the whole of the Act. So what we've done is add some extra definitions to correspond to some of the terminology in added sections later in the bill. We have amended the definition of intimate image so that it now provides it's a visual recording of a person, whether or not the person is identifiable and whether or not the image has been altered in any way, and made by any means in which the person is or is depicted as, 1, engaging in a sexual act, or 2, is nude or nearly nude, or is exposing the person's genital organs, anal region, or breasts, and in relation to which the person had a reasonable expectation of privacy at the time the recording was made, and if the recording was distributed at the time it was distributed. So that's a substantive change to that definition. In the definition of parent, we've changed the reference to a person under the age of a person who is a minor to a person under the age of 18 years. And we've moved the definition, or the section dealing with distribute, to the definition section. So now we have a definition of distribute that says it means to transmit, publish, or otherwise make accessible.
Charlottetown Victoria Park.
Thank you, Chair, that's good for that section.
Shall the section carry?
Carried.
Section 2. Shall section 2 carry?
Carried.
Section 3. Shall section 3 carry? Shall section 4 carry? Shall Charlottetown Victoria Park.
What does section 4 change?
Just one second here. Section 4, it says Section 4 of the Act is repealed. Are you asking what are we repealing?
Yes.
Okay, so we are repealing Section 4 because it's now incorporated into the new Section 3. So previously, Section 4 said an action for the non-consensual distribution of an intimate image may be commenced without proof of damage. Section 3, we now incorporate that concept. So Section 3 now says a person who distributes or threatens to distribute an intimate image commits a tort that is actionable without proof of damage.
Charlottetown Victoria Park.
That's good, Chair, thank you.
Shall section 4 carry?
Carried.
Shall section 5 carry? Shall section 6 carry? Charlottetown Victoria Park.
Sorry, I'm getting lost in the sections here. I just have a question or a clarification around the parental part of it. I'm going to say parental responsibility in that. Which section would that be in?
That would be in Section 10 of the bill, Section 9 of your original bill.
Okay. So I'm good for now then, thank you.
Okay. Shall section 6 carry?
Carried.
Section 7, shall it carry?
Carried.
Section 8, shall it carry? Charlottetown Victoria Park?
I'm wondering, so what changed for section 8? What?
Section 8, we're adding a new section, and this is based on the draft model statute that was developed by the Uniform Law Conference of Canada. It essentially provides where a person depicted in the intimate image consents to the distribution of the image and later revokes it, the person who distributed the intimate image has to make every reasonable effort to make the intimate image inaccessible to others. And it includes a number of different things that that person should look at doing. So essentially, it incorporates that concept that even though you've given consent, you can revoke consent, and the person who was distributing has a legal duty to address the distribution of the intimate image.
Charlottetown Victoria Park?
Thank you for that, I appreciate it. I like that explanation. It takes it a step further. You know, the one thing I really liked about this bill is that it put the onus on the person who shared the intimate image to prove that they had consent, not on the person who's living with the fact that their intimate image has been shared to prove that they did not provide consent. So I really appreciate that part, and that I think it's a really good explanation to why consent is kind of a fluid thing, and that, you know, you can take back consent at any time. So I really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Okay. Shall section 8 carry?
Carried.
Section 9. Shall section 9 carry? Charlottetown Victoria Park.
I'm going to ask the same question for almost every section. I'm just wondering what this section changed.
Just one second. So Section 8 of the original bill provided for the remedies that the court could order in an action under that bill. And the reason we're repealing that is that the material is now addressed in Section 5.2 of the amendment.
Charlottetown Victoria Park.
That's good. Thank you, Chair.
Shall section 9 carry?
Carried.
Section 10.
Question.
Charlottetown Victoria Park.
This is the parental part, right?
Correct.
Okay. Can you explain that,
Yes.
please?
So In your original bill, there was a clause that provided that where a defendant in an action for the non-consensual distribution of an intimate image is under the age of majority, a parent of the defendant shall not be jointly and severally liable for any damages awarded to the plaintiff unless the court is satisfied that the parent directly participated in the non-consensual distribution of the intimate image. The department, after the bill was passed, went and asked legal counsel about whether or not that clause was necessary, given the common law, the tort law in the area. And what we were advised was that there are number one, a parent cannot be held vicariously liable for the actions of their children. They can be held liable in their own account in two ways. First is one that you've mentioned in the original section. They've directly participated in the commission of the tort. So they were an active part. But what we did discover through our research was that the common law also holds that parents have a common law duty to supervise the activities of their minor children. And if they are negligent in that, they can be found liable as well for any damage caused to a third party associated with the breach of that duty.
Charlottetown Victoria Park.
Thank you, Chair. And this was one that, we did have a wholesome briefing on this where we had the opportunity to ask a lot of questions and have some of these answered already, so I appreciate that. Where my head went there was, how fast technology changes. And, people who are not technologically inclined, like me, it's hard to keep up. And so if you don't know what you're looking for, or you don't know, you're trying to stay on top of what your children or youth are doing, and you try your hardest, and yet this still happens. So what sort of how are you held responsible as a parent if your child or your youth were sharing images?
I think what I might do, if it's okay, I'll quote from a Newfoundland Provincial Court decision. I think they summarize the law well. They say, because parents are in a position to govern the child's behavior, they have a corresponding duty to use reasonable care to prevent foreseeable harm to others by proper supervision. Liability may arise for negligence in the exercise of that control should injury or loss occur. But the parent's obligation to supervise has its limits, and these are prescribed by the practices and usages prevailing in the community based upon a common understanding of what is practicable. The extent to which a parent is expected to supervise the activities of a child varies with the age of the child. The duty is heaviest when the child is very young, since it is both vulnerable and dangerous vulnerable due to its naive actions, and when it's dangerous to others due to its unpredictable and impulsive acts. As the child grows older, the expectation that it will adhere to mature conduct increases, and the duty to supervise in order to prevent harm declines. Liability will be found, the extent of parental supervision required varies with age and diminishes as the child gets older, barring unusual and known proclivities in the child. So if you have a 12-year-old, the duty of supervision will be much higher than a 17-year-old. And similarly, if you have a 17-year-old who has never crossed that boundary of behavior, you'll be held to less of a standard than if you knew that 17-year-old has done this in the past. So the court will look at that and make a determination in the circumstances of that case. I would also add, too, I know that the evolution of technology is an issue and how we adapt. And the beautiful part about the common law is these principles evolve. They've evolved for hundreds of years, and they go into the digital age as well. And so the court will look at what as the court mentioned here, they'll look at what the community expectations and standards are to determine what's the appropriate level of supervision in this particular case for the parent to use.
Charlottetown Victoria Park.
Thank you, Chair. And I don't know what section I would make this comment in. I made it on the briefing as well, but community legal information so Sarah Dennis is along with Jamie Griffin of the Women's Network came together and created a really amazing presentation that they are going to be presenting to certain classes in grade 7. So the Minister of Education may want to listen here for a second, if he's not already. Woo-hoo. So they came together and created a presentation, and they did so with the guidance of youth, a youth committee that they worked with to make sure that the language was accessible, that the language was clear, that the language was relatable by children and youth. Well, I guess grade 7 you're not a child, but well related to the youth. Even down to the detail, they wanted to have a lawyer to come in because they're trying to explain the connection between relationship, consent, and the law. And so they come at it from a really interesting perspective that we as adults aren't necessarily going to just think of on our own. And down to the details in terms of they wanted to bring a lawyer in to talk about the legal aspects of it. And the youth said, well, that's fine as long as they're not wearing a suit. You know, and so it's really trying to make it accessible. And so they have even said that they're in the, I can't remember if she said they're in the midst of it or if they're thinking about having also a parent presentation that goes along with it, which would be the same presentation so that everyone's on the same page. And I think that something as serious as, you know, the sharing of intimate images, while it's not just specifically the sharing of intimate images that we necessarily want to get parents and children talking about, but this whole idea of consent and this whole idea of how our world is changing and this whole idea of the power you have of your own body, the power you have in your relationships, the power imbalances, all of those things that they break down. And so I would really encourage, I know this isn't part of the bill, but I'd really encourage you to look at this presentation. And they want to get into the schools. I know they're getting into certain grade 7 classes, but I think it's a real inequity and a real disservice to the other grade 7 students to not have this. And they're willing to do it, and it's done. And it's amazing. So I leave that with you.
Charlottetown Victoria Park, do you have any other questions?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, shall this section carry?
Carry.
Section 11. Any questions, section 11? Shall it carry?
Carry.
Section 12, shall it carry?
Carry.
Shall the bill carry?
Carry.
I move the title.
An act to amend the Intimate Images Protections Act. Shall it carry?
I move the enacting clause.
Be it enacted by the Lieutenant Governor and the Legislative Assembly of the Province of Prince Edward Island as follows. Shall it carry?
Mr. Chair, I move that the Speaker take the chair and that the chair report the bill agreed to without amendment.
Shall it carry? As Chair of the Committee of the Whole House, having under consideration the bill to be entitled an act to amend the Intimate Images Protection Act, I beg leave to report that the committee has gone through the said bill, has agreed to same without amendment. I move that the report of the committee be adopted.
Shall it carry?
Carry.
The Honourable Minister of Economic Growth, Tourism and Culture.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to seek unanimous consent to call Bill number 75 for second reading. This bill was introduced this afternoon.
Honourable members, is there unanimous consent?
Yes.
For 75? Yes? Honourable Minister, you have unanimous consent.
Bill number 75, Opioid Damages and Healthcare Cost Recovery Act, read a second time.
The Honourable Minister of Economic Growth, Tourism and Culture.
Mr. Speaker, I move, seconded by the Minister of Education and Lifelong Learning, that the said bill now be read a second time.
Show it carried.
Bill number 75, Opioid Damages and Healthcare Cost Recovery Act, read a second time.
The Honorable Minister of Economic Growth, Tourism and Culture.
Mr. Speaker, I move, seconded by the Minister of Education and Lifelong Learning, that this House do now resolve itself into Committee of the Whole House to take into consideration the said bill.
Show it carried. Honorable Member from Tignish, Palmer Road, Deputy Speaker, to chair the Committee of the Whole House, please.
Committee of the Whole House take into consideration a bill to be intituled Opioid Damages and Healthcare Cost Recovery Act. A request has been made to bring a stranger onto the floor. Shall it be granted?
Granted.
Thank you very much.
Would you please state your name and title for Hansard?
Blair Barber, Legislative Specialist at the Department of Justice and Public Safety.
Thank you very much, Blair. And Minister, would you like to commence with a brief statement on the bill's intent?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This act provides legal framework for the government to carry on a direct and distinct legal action against certain parties to recover costs of health care benefits provided in relation to the opioid crisis.
Thank you, Minister. Is there anyone that didn't receive a copy of this bill? Honourable members, it is the pleasure of the committee that the bill be now read clause by clause, section by section, or open the bill up as a whole.
Section by section.
Section by section. Okay. Section 1. Any questions? Leader of the Opposition.
I know the promoter of the bill just gave an overview there, but I'm still a little unclear as to exactly what the purpose of this bill is. So that's likely my inability, but if somebody could explain a little further.
It is a very technical bill. So the legislation is being brought forward to facilitate the government's efforts to recover the cost of health care services and social services related to the opioid crisis. So for instance, the cost of emergency services in response to overdose events, the cost of hospital treatment, and various other health costs, including related to addictions. This is similar to the existing Tobacco Damages and Healthcare Costs Recovery Act. So it establishes a new statutory tort related to opioid wrongs, or opioid-related wrongs is how we define them. It establishes the government has a direct cause of action to recover healthcare costs, the cost of healthcare benefits from those who have committed an opioid-related wrong as defined in the Act. So currently there are a number of significant lawsuits and bankruptcy proceedings related to the manufacture, wholesale, and distribution of opioids in both the United States and Canada. This gives us the ability to, it gives us a tort, a statutory tort to be able to sue opioid-related companies for damages based on, how do we deal with it here? On an aggregate basis. So we don't need in the Act to identify particular individuals or prove the causes of opioid-related disease, injury, or illness for any particular individual. We can proceed by way of an aggregate action, relying on population-based evidence to prove our claim, enabling the litigation to proceed as efficiently as possible while still preserving fairness. So it's really similar to the tobacco litigation that the government's been involved with for some time.
Leader of the Opposition.
How many other provinces have such statutes?
Alberta, British Columbia, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, and Labrador. Our bill was based on the Alberta model in particular, but they are all very similar.
Leader of the Opposition.
Is there a similar, or I guess a complementary statute federally regarding criminal litigation of situations like this?
I'm not aware on what the federal government has done on the criminal side, but all of the provinces, to one degree or another, either have enacted legislation or are looking at it because of the litigation that is currently underway. The legislation really, it helps us protect our claim to compensation, even when these cases are occurring in other jurisdictions.
Leader of the Opposition.
Again, I'm exposing my ignorance here, but in a situation like this, can provinces come forward with what you might call a class action suit, or do we have to do this independently, and is that why we have this bill?
There actually has been a class action suit commenced in British Columbia, and we are a member of that class with other provinces and territories. So we can participate in other jurisdictions' litigation. There's also litigation in Saskatchewan, but there we are involved as a public health insurer. So we have a claim for any damages that the plaintiffs might collect from those companies for any damages related to opioid use.
Leader of the Opposition.
So Blair, given that we're a participant in an ongoing case at the moment, what is the advantage of having, I'm not suggesting we don't have it, but I'm just wondering why we need our own statute.
Essentially, our legal counsel, when looking at all the litigation that is occurring, including in the United States where there are bankruptcy proceedings with one of the companies, Purdue, provided an argument that our claim would be more robust or treated more strongly in other jurisdictions if we could show that that legislation was in place.
Leader of the Opposition.
Thanks, Chair. So I understand from what you said earlier that we don't have, there's no burden of proof at an individual level for people who have incurred costs, or the health system has incurred costs for a particular individual, but it's on a per capita basis, is that right, how the claim would be made?
So this legislation pertains to litigation brought by the government only, not to individuals, but it allows the government to make a case for compensation based on aggregate population data and an estimation of the costs that have occurred because of opioid-related wrongs and that are likely to occur because of opioid-related wrongs that have taken place.
Leader of the Opposition.
And are the costs, Blair, specifically and solely related to healthcare costs that one can claim?
We do define cost of healthcare benefits in 1A. It's the present value of the total expenditure by government for healthcare benefits provided for insured persons. And healthcare benefits is defined further on. But that includes other expenditures by the government made directly or through one or more agents or other intermediary bodies for programs, services, benefits, or similar matters associated with opioid-related disease, injury, or illness. In the list, in the definition as well, it refers to the Social Assistance Act, the Long-Term Care Subsidization Act, as well as the more obvious ones that you would associate with the healthcare system. So it's fairly broad. It would include the benefits under the Social Assistance Act as well as the healthcare benefits.
Leader of the Opposition.
Thanks, Chair. The most egregious examples of the opioids, which are presumably leading to the bankruptcy of certain pharmaceutical companies, are based on the fact that they were specifically designed to become addictive. And of course, they did not reveal that. It was only later on through a scientific study that we understood that. In addictions, there are health costs, but there are also social costs. There are judicial costs. Is there any mechanism in this bill to recover any of those, what you might call subsidiary costs?
No, this would be related to the recovery of healthcare benefits as we've defined them. So it would be limited to the definitions we've provided here, which are quite extensive in terms of what that includes.
Leader of the Opposition.
Do we have any sense as to what sort of dollar figure we might be looking at here for the Treasury? In a successful litigation, of course.
I did speak to council about that, and we don't have a figure at this stage. It's still being quantified in terms of the claims we currently have in litigation. So we are looking at that with class counsel, for instance, in the BC case, what that might be.
Leader of the Opposition.
So in the BC case, that provincial government presumably has come forward with a figure attached to their litigation. Can you tell us what that is?
70 million.
I don't have that detail with me today.
Leader of the Opposition.
And as an intervener in that case, I'm not sure if I'm using the correct term, I'm not for an intervener or...
A member of the class.
Member of the class.
Yeah.
Are we, any damages that are given to the provincial government of BC, do we have any possibility of getting some of that money, or do we have to come forward with our own suit?
We would be a member of the class, and so when damages are awarded to the class, I believe that the damages would be, there'd be some direction as to how those damages would be divided among members of the class. So it would not be equal per se. There would be some guidance on how to divide those.
Leader of the Opposition.
That's interesting. So when BC came forward with their litigation, would agreements have been made with the other provinces who are part of that action prior to the 70 million or whatever it is figure, and with an understanding that a certain portion of that would eventually come back to that province as an active participant?
I can't really speak to what has occurred in the litigation with any great detail because it's not part of my brief. It's not part of what I've been working on. I do know, though, that as a member of the class, and that the provinces are represented collectively by class council, that they would be collaborating to the extent that they have class council.
Leader of the Opposition.
So if PEI were to bring forward its own case, other provinces could, excuse the phrase, piggyback on our case, and we might have a similar arrangement with them. Is that possible?
I think at this stage with the BC class action, I want to say we likely wouldn't have a need to commence a case here, that we would be able to pursue that claim through the BC class action. So I don't think that there would be a need for multiplicity of lawsuits dealing with the same sort of damages. That's why we're a member of that class in the BC action.
Leader of the Opposition.
Kind of happy to hear that, Blair, because I don't know, but my instinct tells me that a class action suit against a large pharmaceutical company could be an expensive proposition. So if the purpose of this bill is to prevent us, or not prevent us, but allow us to participate with as you put it, a more robust position elsewhere, then I think that's a very good thing. I don't think I have any more questions, Chair. Thank you, Blair, for that explanation.
Cornwall Meadowbank.
I know when we were in government, this was talked about joining some of these lawsuits after OxyContin and Purdue in the US. And I'm certainly glad that we got to this point, Blair. And I think it was $67 or $68 million that the BC was suing. The one thing though, I just want, so we join the lawsuit and we get our share, whatever it may be, and obviously it's like leader of the opposition said that it'd be a little expensive for a small province like ourselves to take on a large pharmaceutical, but has there been any diagnosis, if that's the term, to get that money to those families that were directly affected by the opioid overdose?
That's not something I could really provide an answer to today. That's not something I would have brought with me.
Cornwall Meadowbank.
No, that's fine, Chair.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
A very similar question, actually, just should we be successful in the BC lawsuit or any subsequent lawsuits? Is there any stipulation or, any guarantee of how that money would be spent, where it would go?
The legislation itself, the bill, does not provide that direction. So should the government be successful in getting compensation, the monies would come to government, and then it would be a cabinet decision, as with any monies that come into government, how those are expended.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
Okay, that's it. Thank you, Chair.
Excuse me. Leader of the Opposition.
Thanks, Chair. Blair, you mentioned that this is similar to the tobacco statute that we have. Has any money ever flowed to government coffers as a result of that?
I don't have direct knowledge, but I believe that the tobacco action is still ongoing.
Right.
Litigation can take quite a while, and but to the best of my knowledge, the litigation is still in process.
They're in settlement now.
Leader of the Opposition.
Chair. Thanks, Chair. You mentioned earlier that at least one of the pharmaceutical companies in question has claimed bankruptcy. Maybe it's an impossible question, but is there any likelihood that we will ever see any money in the provincial coffers as a result of actions here?
Against that particular company, or generally?
Generally speaking.
Again, the litigation file is not my brief, so I don't know all the details, but I would assume we would not pursue an action if we thought there was no money at the end of the case.
Leader of the Opposition.
I'm good. Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Carry the bill. Carry the bill.
Cornwall Meadowbank.
Carry the bill.
Okay. Shall the bill carry?
Thanks. Have a good night.
Shall the schedule carry?
Carry. I move the title.
Opioid Damages and Healthcare Cost Recovery Act. Shall it carry?
Carry. I move the enacting clause.
Be it enacted by the Lieutenant Governor and the Legislative Assembly of the Province of Prince Edward Island as follows. Shall it carry?
Carry. Mr. Chair, I move the Speaker take the chair and that the chair report the bill agreed to without amendment.
Shall it carry?
Carry.
Speakers, Chair of the Committee of the Whole House having under consideration the bill to be intituled Opioid Damages and Healthcare Cost Recovery Act, I beg leave to report that the committee has gone through the said bill and has agreed the same without amendment. I move that the report of the committee be adopted.
Shall it carry?
Carry.
Honourable members, the hour has been called. I'll call on the member from Morel Donagh and the Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move, seconded by the member from Charlottetown West Royalty, that this House do adjourn until Friday, November 20th at 10 o'clock in the a.m.
Shall it carry?
Did a good job.
Safe travels home, everyone.